Hogsty.
Hey everybody, it is the Hogside. This is Alex, your host. I got Steve and Jamal with me, and we have a lot to talk about with Mini-Camp this week happening for the Washington football team. But first, I want to tell you about our partner, Symbol. Symbol.app, www.simbull.app. They are the stock market for sports. You trade sports teams like stocks and earn cash payouts when they win. Symbol has blended that stock market model with the gambling model. You don't have the pains that come with every loss. Instead, you hold on to the team, you watch their value increase, you get a little bit of a payout when they win, like I said. And let me tell you about the value increase for the Washington football team, guys, because I bought them when they first started sponsoring our show, and I got the team at $30 a share. They're almost up to $50 a share. So buying some of these guys low, and then they're going to increase in value, that's going to be worthwhile for you. If you're a homer like me, that's what you're going to do, though. You're going to buy the Washington football team. But maybe you're like Steve, who he buys teams that he thinks are going to have a lot of success, and so they're going to be worth a lot more by the end of the baseball season and the football season or the basketball season, which I guess is really ending now. So don't buy basketball now. Bad time to buy a basketball team. But great time to buy a football team because training camps are starting. Good time for baseball. We're right in the heat of summer. So good time for those. Use our promo code HOGSTY for a $10 deposit bonus. You can do that automatically if you click on their link on our site. That is www.simbull.app. Go and start buying teams today. All right, guys. That takes care of the ad for us for this week. Hope you're all doing well. I know, like I said, it's summertime now. So Jamal and I are dealing with that nice combo of, like, it's 90 degrees and raining all the time now in D.C., which is a weird combo.
With the sprinkle of cicadas.
Yeah, and then, like, the swarm. Are the cicadas down there in Texas, Steve, or is that just an East Coast thing?
No, not at all.
Okay, you guys don't have the Brood X?
No.
You're lucky.
I've heard about it, though. It's made national news.
Well, I mean, every 17 years this happens, yeah.
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 It is very messy right now.
Yeah, especially out by you. I'm sure it is.
Yes.
Whereas, I'm in the city, so it's not too bad here. But, yeah, if you're out in the suburbs or further out than that, like my mom.
Dakota's having a field day.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. But for me, it's just very stupid. Like these bugs are dumb, blind, and very annoying and loud. They wake me up before my alarm does.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know what the difference between an urban cicada is and a suburban cicada.
Well, it's
are
more
the urban
that
ones
there's
going
just
to
not
bars at night and partying, or what?
No, it's just that in the city everything's paved over, so they don't nest underground.
Hey, Alex.
all. Yeah,
it was a joke.
I know. It's just they're very quiet here. They
they're quiet
had
too?
like their white
y'all
flight
are lucky.
thing and never came back.
Well, there's noise, ordinances. They're trying to avoid violating urban noise ordinances.
Yeah, those get violated every night here with fireworks.
And probably other things.
Yes.
Considering where Alex lives.
Yeah, but the fun thing about the cicadas, if you were watching the film or highlights from OTAs and Mini-Camp, is they're so loud there, it's like having crowd noise just pumped into the practice field the whole time.
So they're actually providing a service. Maybe we ought to put them on the payroll.
Right.
Is there like a union leader cicada that we can negotiate with, maybe?
Man, to hell with them cicadas. They ain't getting paid for nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that
I'm just glad it's every 17 years. Like my thing with these things are, my first thought was doing the math. Like, how many times in my lifetime do I have to experience this again? And I counted like 3 or 4 more times I got to experience this.
Right. 5 if you're
How
very
many years
lucky.
is it? 17 years, you said?
17. Yeah, that was off the top of my head. I think I got 3 or 4 more times I got to experience this bullshit.
Yeah.
If anybody out there's a biologist, I'd really kind of like to know the biology behind a swarm of insects that stays underground for a decade and a half, and what keeps them alive, and what makes them decide to come out. Somebody,
They're horny.
I'd like to know
That's
that.
what makes them come out. This is mating.
Yeah, but the bugs aren't lasting. No bug lives 17 years.
They do. They're larvae, and they latch onto like tree roots and plant roots and eat those for 17 years, and then they become bugs instead of being like caterpillar larva types. They pop out.
It's a very interesting biological construct.
It really is.
This thing.
Yes.
Welcome to the biology hour.
Yes. That's not what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about some of this mini-camp stuff that happened this week for the team. It was, 3 days that they practiced. Everyone was there. Chase Young showed up, so everyone can stop panicking about Chase Young.
Nice of him to decide that he was actually going to join the team. Because when Jamal and I talked, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But when he missed the second week of OTAs, I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
So I'm glad he was, deemed us worthy to show up and practice.
So apparently the reason he said that, or that's been stated that he missed all this, was because his schedule's so booked now with advertisers wanting him and stuff like that. That's what's causing.
I have zero sympathy for that whatsoever. Practice football.
Figure out to do the shoots before. Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just saying, figure out to do shoots before camp.
Any other time.
Yeah.
I ain't mad at him.
I am.
I think, cause like it's money, man, and like you're building a brand and you're young. Like I get it, and it's hard to kind of take that away, especially being transparent with your coaches and stuff like that. I think the one thing that you really you kind of have to, I wouldn't say question, but the conversation should be about, I guess, the leadership aspect, and whether or not Chase should be there. But I mean, if he had obligations during a voluntary session, I can't be too mad at him. Like, that's just kind of how I looked at it. And if he was up front, like, it wasn't something where he was talking about he just didn't want to come. Like, he was worried about health and he was worried about money. Like, he was talking about, or not worried about money, but sealing up endorsements. He said that he was focusing on building up, like, trying to avoid that little hip injury thing that he dealt with last offseason. He was focusing on his own training. So it wasn't just endorsements. He was working out on his own too. So I don't know. It was kind of.
I think it shows that the guy has the exact wrong priorities. That's what I think.
I don't think so.
We can disagree with it. I mean, I just, it's like they only get a handful of these OTA days, and you just can't figure out how to work out your precious schedule to come practice with the team. And I realize it's voluntary, but you're supposed to be a team leader. You may be the leader of the entire defense, or at least one of them, and you can't be here. Your commercial's more important to you. Fine. That just tells me a little bit about your priorities. So I just don't like it.
I mean, I'd rather he show up, but I mean, the good news, you can take it as good news. I take it as good news. It sounds like apparently he says that he was communicating with the coaching staff every day anyway. That he was
what are they going to say? I mean, they can't make him show up. I mean, it's voluntary.
Right. But, I mean, he even said that at points he was going into the, weight room and stuff like that. Just he wasn't doing the OTA part, I guess. But, I think the good thing for him and for everybody is it sounds like the defense kind of won minicamp. I don't know.
Surprising though, Alex. I mean, the offenses always take longer to gel.
Right, and this defense is
surprising. Better. Well, sure, it's better, but I think the bigger thing is they have a new quarterback, a bunch of new players on offense. It's like day 3 or whatever. I mean, it's not surprising that the defense won the day. I don't think it means a whole lot.
No, I don't read too much into it, but my point is more that it sounds like they were playing well together. They were gelling pretty heavily. There were a lot of interceptions by that secondary, it sounds like. A lot of big plays there. And not just on Fitzpatrick, some on Allen, some on Heineke. I didn't hear of anything on Montez, but I don't know how many reps Montez gets over those guys. So, that's a factor there.
Well, I thought the biggest surprise to me that this is just me reading, and I think the source may be Ben Standick in The Athletic, if I recall. But Benjamin St. Juste, had a really good camp. Looks like, he made some plays. I think that I was sort of in my head undervaluing his height a little bit. I mean, I think we mentioned it, but just the idea that he's 6'3",
right,
seems to have come into play. Some of the reports were about some 50-50 ball, throws that he won. If he can come in and be like and it's very early, so this is me sort of projecting my hope rather than maybe reality, but if he can come in and be like a legitimate player, he's not going to start over William Jackson, but if he can be a starting quality player early in his career, I think that's more than I was expecting from him. So I think, to me, that was the biggest news out of camp.
I think that was one of the big stories. I don't want to steal anything, because I don't think we talked about beforehand what we wanted to discuss in minicamp, but I'll let Jamal go first, actually, because I got like two things I would bring up. So, Jamal, did anything stand out to you? Like, I'm sure you were watching highlights on social media like I was and reading everything you could, but did anything stand out?
Things stood out, but I don't know, like my thing is, I'll acknowledge it because, I mean, it's being brought up, but I don't want to dive too deep into it. But the thing that kind of stood out to me was the stories behind Taylor Heineke. You can tell early on, like right now, if you're paying attention to some of the people who are reporting or seeing practice every day, there's a narrative being developed right now, and the narrative is stemming from the quarterback competition, or quote unquote competition, that Ron said is going to exist come training camp or just throughout this entire offseason. And the narrative specifically with Heineke is more so he's playing really good. He's playing better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. And whether or not that's true, it could be true, right? But I think the thing is, and to give them credit, they're only reporting what they see. But my question is, to what degree is that the truth of of their perception or how they perceive it? Because from what I understand, every quarterback is turning the ball over right now. And interceptions happen in practice, right? But we're highlighting Fitzpatrick's bad play, quote unquote, and then we're not doing the same thing for Heineke in terms of the public, in terms of what the narrative is out there. And I'm not saying like they're saying Fitzpatrick is a turnover machine, but they're not saying Heineke is turning the ball over. Like, that's not what's coming out. They're saying that Heineke is playing really good. And obviously we know that Heineke is second string right now. So my thing is, I've been seeing the stories, and that's kind of what's sticking out to me. I'm not saying Heineke is bad, but my thing is, we need to relax. We need to relax, because this is minicamp. This is OTAs we're talking about. You don't have to push a narrative so far out because you want to be right about something, or that you want to stir up something, and you want to be the source that actually initiated this conversation. You can wait until training camp and preseason in order to fully evaluate what you're seeing and what you saw out of a 3-day session in May, in June. Like, that's completely stupid. So that's what I'm noticing is the Taylor Heineke narratives.
Well, yeah, I think you're exactly right in terms of, reading too much into minicamp, and it's just a function of today's society where there's cameras and everybody's on, except me, is on social media, and there's a million reports and all of that. But the thing about Heineke is this: he's always been able to play. That's not even really his problem. His problem is he's never been able to stay healthy. More than him just getting beat out, he's had concussion after concussion. He's had every time he turns around, he's been on injured reserve. That's been his problem, more so than him not really getting. He's had his opportunities to play. He had an opportunity in Minnesota, if I recall, to play, and it's just been injuries. So I think that's his biggest challenge. And will he really be a challenge to Fitzpatrick? I mean, who knows? It's just way too early to tell. But I really think it's with him, it's less, can he become, is he a legitimate NFL quarterback, is less of a question than can this man stay on the field. That's my biggest concern about Heineke.
Yeah, and I think that is a lot of people's big concern is the health. Because, yeah, if you watch his game film, he can play. He moves in the pocket well. He's looking downfield well, usually when he's playing. Everything you want to see a quarterback do, he checks those boxes. But he's a smaller guy. And, yeah, like he got hurt in the Tampa game. He got hurt every time he's played, he's gotten hurt so far, to a varying degree. It is an interesting thing, though. I have not seen a single reporter who didn't come away saying Heineke, didn't play really well during OTAs.
He's always done well. I mean, our friendship with Robbie Duncan aside, I think we probably paid more attention to Taylor Heineke on the show than any other show.
Yeah, we were made aware of him very early on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But even beyond that, he's always done pretty well. It's just, with him, it's just health. But listen, I refuse to believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't start this year. It just doesn't make sense to me that he's not going to start. I think Ron Rivera, if he's shown anything in a year and a half, it's that he really does want to win now. I think he truly does. And the way to do that is not to start a guy who has played like 5 minutes. It's to start the wily vet, especially when you have an offense that has a ton of new talent, or new players on it, rather. I just think it's overwhelmingly likely that Ryan Fitzpatrick starts the year no matter what happens in training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I think the odds are. You're right.
I get it, but I think a thing in Taylor's favor that I'll give him personally I'll give him credit for is the fact that I remember that he acknowledged in an interview a few months back that there was a assumption that he wasn't a good practice player based on what somebody knew. There was a conversation, and then when they had him on the show, they asked him, are you a good practice player or not? And he kind of acknowledged that he wasn't the best practice player, which kind of hinders or hurts his chances in terms of the perception of where the coaches are and stuff like that. So I will give him credit in the sense that performing well in practice does, especially early on, it kind of helps your narrative or your perception from the coaches that you're actually taking things a little bit more serious. So I'll give him credit in that sense, but I'm not jumping the gun like some people are and trying to stir up some. I'm not even gonna say trouble because it's not trouble, but it's just stirring up some drama that can actually kind of wait a little bit. I'll give him some credit in that regard.
Well, yeah, I think again it's just a 2021. Everybody was on social media narrative more than anything else. This wouldn't be a narrative. In years ago, we wouldn't have heard about any of this. Mini-Camp wouldn't, barely got reported on. Nobody would think that Taylor Heineke there's a narrative that Taylor Heineke is going to start. It's just a function of everybody hovering on Twitter all day long. You have to talk about something. And in our comment section, I don't know if they've talked about it, but
they do. Yeah.
I just think it's a function of today's coverage of football more than anything else. There's a lot of narratives that aren't
I think that's part of it, but I think there's also, and this would be true for any fan base, you would, as a fan, always rather a 28-year-old somehow gets into that starting role than a 39-year-old. Because long-term, that's better for your franchise. Yeah. So I think there is that factor, too, that people, even if they like Fitzpatrick, he's not a long-term solution. Because math, So I think that's a factor too.
The odds are none of these guys are long-term solutions.
Yeah. The odds are, there's 90 quarterbacks in the NFL. Only 15 are any good. So,
or only 15 of them are above average starters. Is the better way to say it. But yeah, I don't know. To me, a lot of it comes down to money too. I mean, franchises just aren't excited about benching $10 million when, in favor of $1 million. It's a lot of it. Sometimes this stuff comes down to finances. Yeah. But I just think that in this case, Ron Rivera wants to win. He wants to win now. How do you do it? You put the wily veteran in there. I think sometimes it's as simple as that.
I think that's gonna.
That there's like a dramatic difference, in preseason.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be the only way that Fitzpatrick doesn't start.
I think that. Well, I think there's that, and I do think the one thing that is good. I think Rivera is sincere that he wants these guys to compete and push each other at least. I think he's been honest about that with all positions on the roster. I want to change gears. The one thing that I took away from watching the highlights of minicamp, and this is a little thing, everyone's been worried about Antonio Gibson's turf toe issue that he's had, and there have been some highlights of him running, and he is cutting left and right pretty darn well for a guy with turf toe, so that's a good sign to me. And, I know it's non-contact, blah, 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 blah. Cuts are cuts. If he puts his heel in the dirt or whatever and, changes his direction a little, that's a good sign. So, things like that to me are promising, because I think the running game's going to go through him. So
it would have been a heck of a turf toe problem for him to still be suffering from it all these months later in any significant
like that,
degree.
Though, you know that.
How long do they usually last, turf toe injuries?
It depends. Sometimes it's gone on a couple weeks. Sometimes it lasts for a whole season.
Sometimes Lavernia Scholes, I feel like, had it for 3 years.
Seems like it, yeah. And then some of these old Redskin teams from generations gone by have had guys that have suffered for turf toe forever. It seems like.
Right.
So it just it just depends. But I mean, again, through an entire off season, I would find it hard to believe he's still suffering from it.
Sure.
To a significant degree.
Yeah, it might bug him like when it's cold out or raining or something still, but
yeah,
because that's what it is. It's like a weird muscle twinge thing that does that. All right, well, let's change gears here. I want to, one of the highlights that I saw that really seemed to excite a lot of people on social media was Cole Holcomb made a heck of a leaping jump to break up a pass on Bates at one point. And, if you haven't seen it, Holcomb's basically lying on his back in the air at one point to get to this ball. He really got up there height-wise. And I bring that up because our position group is linebackers this week. So, I want to start with, this is probably one of the more revamped bits of the roster in some ways. We lost, who was it, KPL. And, our first round pick was a middle linebacker, which is something we've never done before. So,
yeah, Thomas Davis retired. He barely played last year.
Oh, Michael Kendrick, and that.
Yeah, Michael Kendrick's left. He didn't really contribute. KPL is now with the Houston Texans. The arrivals are Jamin Davis, obviously. Then you have David Mayo, who's essentially become the backup middle linebacker. Then Justin Phillips, and then Joe Walker, who has a little bit of experience. The returners from last year are Jonathan Bostic, who was and is the starting middle linebacker. Holcomb, the aforementioned Holcomb, Cleek Hudson, Jordan. I think I've decided that Jordan's name is Kunacek, I think is how you pronounce it. And then Jared Norris. So
Kunacek, I would pronounce it Kunaziak.
No, that's not it. No, I'm pretty sure it's Kunacek.
Kunacek. All right.
Yeah. So let's just start with the start. By the way, this is our position group breakdown, is what we're trying to say.
Yes.
And I published the written column about this past Friday. So if you want to read it, you can read there. So let's start with the starting group. To me, the lineup here is Bostic in the middle, Holcomb on the strong side, or on the strong side, and Davis on the weak side. To me, that's where the group may start out, but I'm not convinced it's where it's going to end up. So what do you guys think about the starting group?
Well, I think that Davis is playing a lot of middle linebacker in training camps and mini camps and stuff like that so far. He's that guy that they say they want to put everywhere, but if you look at the reports, he's playing middle linebacker.
Well,
and Bostic, I think, missed part of OTAs, by the way.
When we first drafted Davis, we didn't draft anybody. Yes. When the Redskins first drafted Davis, my instant thought was weak side linebacker. Instantaneously, that I thought there's a starting weak side linebacker. But the more I think about it, the more I think he may start out there just to give him some NFL experience. But I think long term, they probably want him in the middle. I mean, you don't draft a guy 19th overall, to not be the captain of your of your linebacker group. I think so, and I think he's got the skills, his athleticism. He just needs experience. He needs experience more. That's the one knock on him. He didn't play very much at Kentucky. Really, only 1 year of significant starting time. So, I think he may end up at middle linebacker, but I tend to think that the season is going to start out with Bostic at middle linebacker.
I mean, I think you might see them flip around quite a bit.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I'm a little confused here. Not in a bad way, but it's hard to kind of project what you can see out of this position because Jamin has been playing middle linebacker this entire offseason to this point. And I think the thing here is they said that they wanted to, kind of get him in a position where he's comfortable, at the linebacker position where he's comfortable and that he's most familiar with. But I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, if y'all have other plans for him, why on earth is he not playing the Will or the Sam? Like, whatever side they want to put him at. I'm not saying which side he should be on. But I'm saying if you have other plans for him, I just don't understand why you want to put him at a position where he's already comfortable and he's familiar with. Like, that's obviously okay. He's okay there, but see how he performs at the position where you kind of want to put him, unless they have confidence in Bostic that he can play the Sam or the Will, and that kind of offsets the whole idea of moving Jamin to the outside. I just don't know, but that's kind of where my confusion is, because we kind of assumed he wouldn't be playing middle linebacker here, but you never know based on like the practices, because you got to pay attention. For example, Troy Apke has not been playing safety
right
this entire OTAs, mini-camp, whatever. He has not been playing safety. He's been playing cornerback. So you do kind of have to read into that a little bit. Like, he's been playing middle linebacker. So if they don't have any intention, or if they have intentions of putting them elsewhere, why the hell do they have him at middle linebacker? That's just kind of my confusion. It's hard to project that trio, specifically speaking on Davis right now, though.
Well, I remember Rob Henson, who obviously knows linebacker far better than all of us. Remember him talking on this show about Bostic as a Sam.
Right.
that fits Bostic very well. And if I recall what Rob said, I think, was that Holcomb could be a decent middle linebacker with Bostic at the Sam. I think that was Henson's view. Obviously, that was before Jamin was even drafted. I just don't see Cole Holcomb as a long-term, every-down starter at the Will position just because he's bad in coverage, And so, I mean, maybe his destiny is as a 2-down linebacker, more than a 3-down linebacker, because they just can't have a guy out there who's a liability in coverage all the time at that position.
Well, I think part of the liability issue in coverage for him is also been the lack of a solid free safety, to put it bluntly. We haven't really had that position filled well, although I think they've done some stuff to fix that now. Holcomb, he's got speed. He's decently fast. I can trust him on some tight ends. The one thing I'll say about these three guys, tight ends are pretty tall these days, and Holcomb and Bostic are both, on the shorter side of average for a linebacker, whereas Davis at 6, I think he's 6'4". Like, you look at the physical matchup, I like his size on a lot of the tight ends in the league these days. Even though I think he's a little bit leaner as a linebacker, just because of that height. I think, you take he's got elite speed. He's going to be the guy that you want covering tight ends for the most part.
Well, Davis is 6'3", first of all, not
he's 6'3", okay.
But yeah, like I said, I mean, my instant thought about Davis was, here's your weak sside linebacker.
Right.
Put
him on the tight end.
That was my thought. And I don't know how much a free safety is going to matter, in a cover 3 in this situation. The free safety's job is not to cover the tight ends underneath, in that kind of zone. So it may be more of, linebacker problem than the safety problem to me. I don't know. I mean, I think the only thing we can definitely conclude is that we know who the 3 starters are.
Right.
It's got to be Bostic, Holcomb, and Davis. But it seems like it's a bit of a mystery wrapped up in a mystery that we'll have to see in training camp, really, who's going to be where. I think the only thing we can safely conclude is that Bostic is not going to be a weak side linebacker.
I don't think so.
Saying that.
I think the real question to me will be when they go to a nickel package and a dime package, who's staying out there the most? And to me, you want your first-round pick to be that guy.
Davison coming off the field.
Yeah, you don't...
I'll say it's probably won't be Jamin.
Yeah, you probably want him to be the dime backer.
To me, you pull Cole Holcomb off. You know, I mean, he's not good in coverage. And so in a nickel or dime situation where you got to bring a linebacker off the field, to me, you would want Bostic and Davis out there, not Holcomb.
See, I feel like Bostic is just as much of a coverage liability, frankly. He's okay, but both of them are...
Neither one of them are any good at it.
Yeah, neither of them are great in coverage.
No.
I lean towards Holcomb just because I think he's faster, and I might be wrong about that. I
don't think Holcomb is very athletic, ultimately, personally.
I disagree with you. I think he's actually on the plus side of being athletic. He's on the minus side like Davis.
I think he's average at best. That's the way I've always viewed Holcomb. I don't think he's overly athletic.
Jamal, you have to be the tiebreaker there.
Look, I personally think that I get where Steve is coming from. There's been comments in the past that recognizes his speed, but kind of separates that from his athletic ability. Like, he's fast, but he's not that much of an athlete. Personally, I think he is athletic. I don't know, like, he's not. Put it this way. I'll put it this way in clear-cut statement. I don't think he's as athletic as he should be for a guy with his speed. Does that kind of settle it? Like, I don't think he should be a little bit more agile, and he's not. But he does have speed, and he's a valuable person in that regard. Like, you could use him. He's similar to like Troy Apke in the sense that you want to try and find a way to keep him on the field. Troy Apke is different in the sense that he just ain't that good. But Cole has the potential to be a better linebacker, and a lot of people see that in him. So they're going to try and find a way, to Alex's point, to try and keep that man on the field. It's just whether or not he can really show out for the coaches and have them trust him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was Jamal's way of practicing public speeches when he's running for office, because he delicately towed the line between both opinions.
Little diplomacy there, yeah.
I completely understood both sides, you know. So I had to elaborate and express that.
Well, speaking of athletes, let's move on, because there's a bunch of backups to talk about.
I
want to start next with Khaleke Hudson, because I think he's the most interesting here. Khaleke is a guy who played a unique role at Michigan. Michigan called it Viper. Ohio State has the same thing. They call it like Bullet, I think. It's sort of Landon Collins-esque, to try and explain it. It's what Michigan used him as a sort of a do-everything safety linebacker combo. And to have a guy like that, you need an uber-athletic dude, which is what Khaleke Hudson is. Now, he's small by linebackers. He's bigger than me. Well, he's small by linebacker, so he's only 5'11", 224 pounds, but he's got a lot of speed. He's got a lot of agility. I think his physical profile does not lend itself to ever being a full-time starter in a 4-3, but the role he carves out in Washington long-term may be sort of this extra linebacker, again, maybe sort of Landon Collins-esque type of role, a guy who's going to both drop into coverage and be sort of all over the place in the box. So I think he's an interesting guy. He didn't really get much of a shot last year, but in year 2, maybe we'll see more of him.
Yeah, I think he kind of got redshirted last year, it felt like.
A little bit, yeah.
But he is an interesting position with that Viper position and money back, or whatever people want to call it. Everyone calls it something different now.
Alex has called it money backer for like
I don't know. I've always
years.
said I don't like money backer. I love that nickname Viper that they gave it when Rivera came in. You know, Give it a
Well, that was
cool
from
animal.
Michigan, not Rivera. That was
okay,
University of Michigan.
That's what he was called at Michigan.
Yeah.
Here's the one thing I remember when we drafted him, and I was looking at all his highlights. The thing he's really good at is just being that edge rusher, safety, linebacker type. Like his best plays were always when he was going after the quarterback from the edge outside the defensive end. Not so much in coverage, not so much, run stuffing. But that might be kind of what they bring him in to do time to time is, hey, we want to just mess with them, put a guy outside of, Chase Young, and let's see what happens. And they could use an extra edge rusher like that at this point, in my opinion. It never hurts to maybe do that 5 times a game. And that could be his role.
Yeah. I don't have much for Hudson. For personally, I didn't see much of him last year. I mean, none of us did. I didn't see enough of him, is what I should say. I didn't see enough of him last year to formulate anything. And I mean, I know he's an athlete, and he's made a couple plays throughout this offseason to this point. So he's someone I'm paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, who knows where he can fit? He doesn't. I'll put it this way: for him, he don't want to be in a situation where he gets put in like the middle of something where coaches don't know how to play him or how to use him, so they just delegate him to special teams. He doesn't want to be put in that position. So he's going to be one who has to stand out in training camp to force himself on the field. That's going to be the situation that he's in. I'll say that much for a person that I don't have too much of an opinion on.
I pulled up his stats real quick. In terms of snap counts last year, he played only 51 snaps on defense, but 359 snaps on special teams. So he definitely was. That was where he was making his bread and butter.
What Jamal says is a valid concern for him. He's kind of a man without a country a little bit. It's like that the Tom Hanks movie where he got stuck in the airport, in customs for like a month. That to a certain extent, I love my analogies, as everybody knows, and to a certain extent, that's Khaleke Hudson. He's sort of stuck in customs because it's not what he does, what he did in college, and what his skill set lends itself to isn't really a starting middle linebacker, and it's also not a starting safety. It's just sort of an amorphous. I can do a lot of things. It's sort of Isaiah Simmons-esque in some ways, in that you need to have a coaching staff that is creative enough to use you properly. And I do think Jamal has a point where he could get, and Alex, your numbers sort of establish this, he could just sort of get dumped into special teams because they don't really know what to do with him. You know?
He does like 2 things pretty well as a linebacker.
I think the comp is Landon Collins, honestly.
It is.
He's about the same size as Landon Collins. Landon Collins in New York sort of did this Viper-esque role in that if you really, which I did watch I studied his Giants film, Collins, and he was sort of all over the place doing this kind of hybrid safety linebacker thing. That's really what Khaleke Hudson is. So long term, I mean, is the guy a strong safety? A run stuffing strong safety, or in the box rather strong safety in a cover 3? I mean, it's just a thought that's been going through my head. Maybe he's more of a strong safety than a linebacker.
I mean, I just think from what little we've seen of him, and I don't think any of us are going to claim to have watched all his Michigan film or anything. But
no.
From what at least my take would be, whereas Collins can kind of sit in that second tier and drop back pretty well, this guy is more of a put him on the line of scrimmage type linebacker than anything else.
Yeah, I think he's definitely he's more linebacker than safety, but I think if there's a comp here, I think it's Landon Collins, personally.
I mean, if you were going to say who's he going to go in and sub in for, probably Collins, yeah.
And I think his skill set fits that, too.
Yeah, you're not going to necessarily want him to sub in for Jamin Davis.
Well, no, nobody's subbing in for Jamin Davis.
Yeah.
Let's move to David Mayo, because I think he's next on my list. David Mayo is one of the very few linebackers on this team that actually has significant NFL experience. It looked from what I haven't seen a single social media highlight, because social media is the devil and the spawn of Satan.
I don't think he really has many social media highlights.
Oh, okay. But what I have seen is that they are subbing him in for middle linebacker quite a bit, which makes sense to a certain extent. I mean, he was with the Giants in a 3-4,
Mm-hmm.
and in New York they had him playing inside on the weak side.
Yeah, right inside linebacker is what he's listed as.
Well, that's a 3-4. So
Yeah.
I think Mayo's destiny here is he's the backup middle linebacker. Whoever ends up playing middle linebacker, be it, we've talked about all three of Bostic, Holcomb, and Davis at middle linebacker. David Mayo is the backup. I think that's his destiny on this team.
I would assume so. I also think, part of the reason they probably brought him in is, again, just to be a good special teams guy, because when he was with Rivera in Carolina, that's mostly what he did. I think he had, I'm just looking at his numbers again. For the most part, he didn't play a lot on defense in Carolina.
Well, he's a backup. That's what he is. It's a backup.
So I think he's partly here to be, a backup, and, mostly because he's a linebacker, you're going to worry about him being a leader on special teams. So, by the way, I'm looking at his numbers in New York. For his whole career, he's played 6 seasons and under 200 tackles total, 173. Mm-hmm. So that kind of tells you where he is at.
Well, yeah, I mean, the guy's he's played 86 games. He's started 19.
Yeah.
173 tackles. I think he's less of a special teams guy and more that they needed an experienced veteran linebacker who could sub in, and that's David Mayo. I think that's why he's here.
Sure. And only 2 sacks in his career. That's pretty low, too.
A lot of linebackers don't have a ton of sacks unless they're 3-4 edge rushers.
3-4.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. Thoughts on David Mayo, Jamal?
There
you go. Okay, so we'll move on. The next guy I want us to go to is Jared Norris, because he's the only other guy who's played in any significant amount, basically.
Mm-hmm.
6'1", 240, undrafted free agent out of Utah, signed by guess who? Ron Rivera in Carolina. So this is a guy who Ron Rivera knows and likes. There's several of these linebackers who are Carolina holdovers. This is not a guy who has any athletic ability by NFL linebacker standards. He ran a 4.8 40, jumped less than 30 inches in the vertical leap. This is not an athletic dude. He's not a starter. He's only been active for 39 games. So where does he fit? I have him listed as an outside linebacker because I didn't really know where else to put him, to be honest. I think this is a guy who is just here because Ron knows him, likes him, thinks he's an NFL player, and they'll kind of figure out what to do with him. Norris is a guy who probably needs to focus on special teams. But, if a bunch of people get hurt, we're going to see Jared Norris playing.
Sure.
At linebacker.
Sure. And by the way, it feels like they have a type at linebacker. All these guys seem to be like 6'1", except for
Jamin.
Davis. Yeah. Everyone's like the same 6'1", around 240. They don't have a lot of variety in terms of size and body type.
No, the only guy, and we'll get to him, is Jordan Kunacek. He's 6'3", but all the rest of these guys, but beyond Davis are 6'1", 6'2".
They all have that same build.
Kind of. I mean, they look like an NFL linebacker.
Well, but sometimes you'll have that strong linebacker who's a little bit heavier because you want him to stop the run a bit more.
I think in today's world, these linebackers have gotten a little bit smaller and a little bit more athletic.
True.
You don't see a lot of these guys who are 250, 260 at linebacker anymore just because they're not fast. One thing NFL defenses have gotten to in today's game is speed. And you can't have speed at 260 unless you're just a freak of nature. And I think that's why those guys have kind of drifted to other positions.
Right. A lot of them move to end now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we could talk for 30 minutes about Jared Norris, but I'd rather not.
Nah.
So let's keep going through here. Joe Walker, 6'2", 236. He was drafted by the Eagles. He's another guy. He's far more athletic than Norris. 37-inch vertical leap, ran a 4.6. So he does have some athletic ability. He was with the Cardinals. You know, in a 3-4, I'm not going to pretend to have watched a ton of Joe Walker film. I think he's more of a middle linebacker type. So I think this is your third string middle linebacker here in Joe Walker. I'm assuming nobody has any Joe Walker thoughts, so I'm going to move on from him, and we're going to get to Kunacek, who I'm guessing at the pronunciation that this is Polish, and it's Kunacek, but it could also be Kunacek.
Yes, Kunacek.
Yeah, but I'm thinking Kunacek.
Yes.
Anyway, this is another Ron Rivera, Carolina Panther holdover. He was with the Panthers. He's not athletic at all. He's another 4'8" guy. He's only played 15 games in 2 years. Only has 10 tackles. He's been a career special teamer. This is the guy that Ron Rivera brought in to be a special teamer right here. Jordan Kunacek.
He did play a little bit for Washington last year on special teams only.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, he was here.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I had no idea who he was.
Let me see if I can figure out when he came in. But I think he only... Well, it says he was here for 6 games, so he probably came in the second half of the season.
He did. He did. So that's Jordan Kunacek. I mean, I think he's a special teamer, you know, and that's his destiny.
I mean, a lot of these guys, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. Justin Phillips is another one. He is a 2019 undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma State. Phillips is a little bit smaller, 6 foot, 235. Originally signed by Dallas. Dallas got rid of him pretty quickly, and then he caught on with the Raiders. Sat out half of 2019 with a knee injury, and now he's in DC. He's a career practice squatter. You know, this is what he is. He's a practice squad dude. The one thing I'd like to bring up here at this point, and so that's kind of the group. I don't know what to think about Shaka Toney and William Bradley King, whether one or more of these guys are linebackers.
Right.
I think Toney probably not. I think it's probably more Bradley King. Toney seems to me to be an edge rushing specialist, and in Washington's system, that's really more of a defensive end more than anything. So it makes me think maybe William Bradley King might end up being a linebacker. Pardon me?
Sorry, I was my cat.
Talking to it.
Yeah. Is
you were talking to the cat. I'm glad you were paying
attention. Sorry, I thought I hit mute.
Oh. You did not.
Oh.
So I think that's a wild card, or what happens to those two guys. But so last year Washington kept 8 linebackers, which is a lot considering it's a 4-3. But if you assume that they keep 8 again this year, we have the 3 starters who are locks: Holcomb, Bostic, Davis. Behind that, you have to think Hudson probably gets another year. He was a draft pick last year, so that's 4. And so then you've got basically 5 people fighting for 4 spots remaining. So one of them is going to be on the practice squad, probably Phillips. So we might end up seeing all of these guys make the roster, because there's not a ton of extra. All the extra players are on the secondary. You know, they've got a ton of corners. So I don't think any of these guys are going to get cut. It may be Phillips that gets put on the practice squad, and we see all of these guys on the active roster this year.
All right. I know you kind of just said it, but I wasn't counting in my head. How many linebackers are there currently? There's 8.
No. There's 9 currently.
And you think all of them make the roster?
Well, last year they kept 8 on the active roster. I'm just going off last year. If they keep 8 again, then one person gets cut. It's probably Justin Phillips, because he was a practice squatter last year. He's probably a practice squatter again. If they keep 7, maybe someone else gets cut. But last year they had 8. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm thinking in my head, because like there is a lot of DBs.
It's
a dilemma, and they have a ton of defensive linemen too.
Not to mention, you've got these corners and safeties who are kind of going to be tweeners now between safety and,
I'm just going off last year though. I mean, if they kept 8 last year, they may keep 8 again. It's not going to be more than 8, so you got to figure either 7 or 8 total. And so really only 1 or 2 of these guys is going to get cut. out of this group of linebackers.
Which
That's what
seems
I'm saying.
surprisingly low, honestly.
They don't have a ton of linebackers.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so you got to assume the big three. Those are obviously staying in. Hudson probably, they'll
Right.
give him another shot.
David Mayo's going to make it.
Yeah. And one of those two
So that's
guys
5.
who they brought in just to play special teams, like Kunziak or whoever.
Kunacek. Well, I mean, again, remember, we have 9. If you keep 8 or 7, the better way to go is say who's going to get cut.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume it's going to be Phillips, just because,
Right.
He's already undersized. You already have a guy like that with Hudson.
Well, he was on the practice squad last year.
Yeah.
Too, so he's probably going to go to the practice squad again.
Yeah, that's who I would go with.
Yeah. So it's not that much of a debate this year in terms of predicting the roster, just because there aren't a ton of linebackers. The only wild card in this is if Bradley King or Tony ends up being a linebacker, then somebody else, then one or more additional people will get cut.
Right.
So it's an interesting group, but that is linebackers, kids.
Yeah, I like you guys said. Sorry, I was a little quiet there. It really is kind of a pickle because it does come down to special teams and like, do you really want to? Like, how are you going to maximize the amount of people that you have? Like, you're not going to have as many defensive linemen on special teams, but at the same time, you do like to have the linebackers. They do a lot for you on special teams, and DBs can fit. It's just hard, man, because you need the help. They need the help in the secondary, and then the linebacker depth isn't that strong. So it's like, how do you balance that? But thankfully, I'm not a coach, so I'm not even. This is the last thing I'll say about it before I stress myself out and keep pushing. But it just had me stumped for a good little second. Like, how are they going to balance that?
Yeah.
Well, part of the problem is that we haven't, because there was no offseason last year, we haven't seen any of these guys play. So it's a bit hard for us to sit here and predict when we really haven't seen anything. Presumably, there have been some Twitter highlights, I guess, of some of them this year, which I haven't seen. But
not really. Not okay. Backup linebackers.
So, I mean, it's for this group in particular, it may be a little bit easier just to wait till preseason starts to do a reasonable prediction, but there's just not going to be a ton of them cut. That's my point. There's not that many linebackers, and there's 1 or 2 guys who are not going to make it at most.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the special teams being a factor, and one thing to keep in mind with that is, the positions that linebackers play on special teams in punt coverage, you're either going to be a linebacker or a tight end, playing on that interior line in coverage or whatever. And we did upgrade the tight end position a little bit this offseason. So those guys might push. Like, is it more worth it to keep 2 or 3 good tight ends who are playing special teams versus 8 linebackers? Like, that's how the special teams stuff will shake out too. We got to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay. I'm done talking about backup middle linebackers. I'm going to do a little bit of a roster update. There have been a couple moves.
Oh, thank you.
So we'll go over them here real quick. And I think I have this right. I'm still trying to sort through this because Washington was nice enough to make a move or two and without telling anybody. So they brought in Gabe Wright, who's a defensive lineman. Who's Gabe Wright, you would ask? I wouldn't blame me for asking because I didn't know who Gabe Wright was either. He is a 4th-round pick in 2015 with the Lions. He's been with like all the teams since then. He was with the XFL for 5 seconds in 2020 before the XFL died. Was with the Jacksonville Jaguars off-season program. 6'3", 300 pounds, out of Auburn. I don't really know why they would bring this guy in other than one of these coaches must dislike him because they have a ton of defensive linemen already. That was kind of an odd signing. This is a guy, he's on a min salary thing here. So this is a guy who's being given a shot, and that's it. So that's Gabe Wright. And then they also brought in another interior offensive lineman, Najee Torin. Now, Najee Torin is from UCLA. He is a 2018 undrafted free agent. has never been in an active NFL game. He's another guy that's bounced around here or there. So this is another like tryout player essentially. So that is who they brought in. Now, if you're doing some look-see, you'll see that I think equals 91. The reason why they can do this is that Dylan Cantrell was sneakily put on injured reserve. Yeah, and this is what they didn't announce. Thank you, Washington, for not announcing this. But Dylan Cantrell is now on injured reserve already because of, I believe, a knee injury. And so that brings us to 90, I'm fairly certain. Yeah, so that is a roster update. And they've got, depending on how you count these last couple spots, they've got a roughly $16 million in free cap space. So just enough to not trade for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, because that's going to cost you a lot.
Aaron Rodgers ain't going anywhere. I'll say that right now. The Green Bay Packers will never trade Aaron Rodgers. That's my prediction.
I don't think
he's going anywhere right now, but I don't think he's playing with him this year.
I don't think that he's gonna. I think he's gonna play for Green Bay or not play at all.
I think he might not play. That's what I would.
I don't believe him for a minute. I don't buy it for a minute. I mean, he's not going to give up that kind of money. This is just him pouting like a little whiny girl. That's what it is.
We'll see. We had two more topics we wanted to touch on. One, I'm going to hit the real quick one first. Alex Smith apparently is gone to just about every major sports entertainment industry TV station. ESPN, Fox, CBS, all them. Looks like everyone's kind of hot on him becoming a broadcast booth guy, or doing. If he goes to ESPN, they said that he'd probably have his own. He'd be a talking head, not doing a broadcast. But that's one. A surprise one. Jay Gruden apparently interviewed to do a broadcast booth job with Fox, which you might not like Jay Gruden, but he's entertaining. I could see him working well in a booth, even better than his brother, because his brother didn't have the best sense of humor about everything like Jay does. And then Mark Sanchez also looking for a broadcast booth job, which that would be funny. That's three former Washington people technically looking for broadcast jobs.
Mark Sanchez probably be pretty good. I mean, if I were Sanchez, I may look to college maybe first.
Yeah,
I think it'd be a better college analyst, perhaps. Pardon me?
The Tebow route?
Yeah, I think he would be good at that. Jay has got a weird, dry sense of humor. So I don't know how that would play in like a game as a color analyst. I don't know. And Alex Smith is kind of quiet, and he's not really a dynamic speaker. So I tend to think he may be better as a talking head than in a booth.
Now, I think that Alex Smith as a talking head would be really good. Gruden, like his brother, really good at breaking down schemes and stuff real time. Like, I think he could be pretty good there, too.
Yeah. Listen, Alex, I mean, if you want a spot, we can create a fourth slot on the Hog's Thigh.
I don't know. We'd have two Alexes. I'd have to change my name or something.
We'll call you Zeus.
Yeah, that's fine.
Before Dakota goes off again, I'm actually a fan of Gruden in terms of him and seeing him and his opportunities. Because he's an honest and funny guy, and that kind of actually works well in the booth when you're analyzing, assessing what you're seeing, but also critiquing players or coaches whenever it comes down to that opportunity or that moment. So I'm actually a fan of Gruden. And
I think he'd be a home run banter wise too.
Oh, one other person. Yes, I agree, Alex. One other person that did an interview was Robert Griffin.
I saw this story. Yeah.
Yeah, he had the same opportunity. I don't know what the result was. I guess everybody is all waiting for offers or something like that, like finalizing deals or something. But he also interviewed or tried out for a position as well. So I'm interested in seeing that happen because he's a very good talker as well. And we can see how that may translate to the booth or analyzing in terms of being just an analyst, a sports analyst. So we'll see. But he also interviewed too. So it's kind of it's kind of crazy seeing how things come full circle. Because like I said, both of those two are good talkers. And it can translate well when you're still talking about sports and football.
I'd say RG3 should go the college route too, though, if we're thinking about,
I don't know, because I'm glad you guys brought this up, because I saw this story, and I mean, I know Redskins fans hate him and everything, but he's very charismatic. He's very smart. It might not have worked out for him as an NFL quarterback, but he can break down and analyze things, and he can be good on camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to think he may be a good guy to have in a booth breaking down stuff live, during game time. That would be my thought. And the other thing I'd mention here is I remember, since we're talking about Jay Gruden, I remember Jay criticizing the fact that Tony Romo was getting so much credit. You remember seeing this quote from Jay last year? Jay was talking about how everybody thought Romo was, a magician for predicting these plays, and Jay said, I could do that for every play. It's nothing special, and Romo's getting way too much credit, and I thought that was kind of funny. So, I don't know. I mean, all these guys probably aren't going to end up in the booth.
Alex Smith will get one of these.
Alex Smith is a hot prospect right now.
Yeah, he's probably the top prospect of all those people out there.
Probably so. I'd say so. And Jay probably is just looking for a stopgap job while he works on another coaching position.
Probably.
I would guess. That's what a lot of these coaches do.
Yeah. All right. So last topic we'll hit real quickly because I find it interesting. Steve finds it interesting. Most people don't. The stories that have come out that they're ripping out everything at FedEx Field in terms of the stadium field itself, and going down to like the irrigation stuff and replacing that, even the pipes and things like that. And they're putting in all new turf, or I guess it counts as turf even if it's just grass, right? Turf doesn't mean AstroTurf. So yeah, they're like ripping everything out and replacing it, which is
they've reseeded in the past, but what they are doing now is they're totally changing the irrigation.
Right.
They ripped out all the, I'll call it foundation. I know that's not the right term, but they've ripped out everything and are starting completely over with a totally new field. And so we'll see if it ends up being more than painted dirt.
Yeah. So I know the story that you and I both read, Steve. 500 dump trucks worth of old dirt and grass and stuff that they're taking out.
Yeah, this is out of the Athletic, by the way, if somebody wants to find it.
So, that's a big project for them. I'm surprised that they kind of waited this late. I'm sure they know what they're doing, but you would have thought that they would do this like towards the end of the last season, not wait this late.
What, and do it during the middle?
It should be done soon, though. So, it's going to be done before the season. I should be done soon, but it'll be done before the season. So I get it, but it's no big deal.
Yeah.
You're not going to replace a field in December in the Northeast.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It would be a lot harder to dig.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. I've often joked Washington fans know more about the types of grass and turf that are used than anybody else, just because we've had to deal with such bad fields here for the Redskins and the football team and all that.
I want to say we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but in some capacity or another, I still think they ought to just give up and put some sort of AstroTurf type thing in.
Go 70s style AstroTurf where it's just carpet.
And I don't mean paint. No. I don't mean carpet, but some sort of hybrid, turf thing. I mean, I don't know why you don't do that and just.
My gut tells me they'll do that in the next stadium. Not that
maybe.
Whenever they burn down FedEx or whatever they do with it. So
burn it down.
All right, guys. I think that wraps it up this week. Nothing else that I have on our list. So if you are looking forward to more news, I don't really know what the team's doing next week. I think they're off. So we're going to have to
That would be nothing, Alex.
Yeah.
We're going to have to find some stuff to talk
about. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you guys then, and for now, just have a good week.
Bye.